Peace, family. I think we are live. Just going to make sure we turn this phone down. Just want to make sure that we are actually streaming live so we can have this conversation. Yes. Okay, good. Yes. All right, y'all. How y'all doing? Like, as I promised, I said I was going to go live to talk about this Joe Rogan controversy that everybody's talking about. The censorship that many people are calling for because of, well, first it was about, misinformation. There was a lot of outrage about this. And now there's a new outrage about Joe Rogan's perceived racism. He was reported to have made a lot of racist statements in the past. We've seen it. We've seen some video. We've seen some clips of him using the N-word that were pasted together in like a, I don't know, like maybe like a 3-minute clip or something like that. Someone like combed through his whole entire history and pulled out every time that he used the N-word, like very short 1-2 second clips. And there was also a problematic, an extremely problematic story he told about going to a movie theater in an all black neighborhood where he likened it to Planet of the Apes. So, yeah, he kind of has his nuts in the bind right now. But while so many people are calling for Joe Rogan to be removed from Spotify, there are also many people who are supporting him. There are a lot of people who are questioning whether this current push right now, is it really about racism, or is it about something else? So I want to welcome my good friend, Dr. Rick Wallace, to the platform so we can have this little conversation. And I just want to start by asking you, Dr. Rick, first of all, when it comes to Joe Rogan, how important, well, no, I'll even take it back a second. What do you think is the basis for all of this outrage?
Well, I think that what we're looking at is what normally typically happens with media manipulation is the powers that be get into a power struggle about something, and they use the masses as leverage. And most of us don't get it, and so we fall victim to it each and every time. Am I a fan of Joe Rogan? No. Do I think that at times he has some things to say that are right? Yeah. And one of the things that I've always been able to do is because I can separate the messenger from the message, is I can learn from almost anybody, even people I don't like, because if I only deal with people I agree with and like, it limits my capacity to learn. If I can sit up and say, I don't feel this person, but I'm going to test the merits of what they're saying, it leaves me open to learn from anyone. With Joe Rogan, has he said some stupid stuff? Has he been very disrespectful to black people? Absolutely. One of the reasons I'm not a fan. To me, it's not about whether I like him or not. It's about understanding the principles and the how things are set up. So what you have to understand is the moment you open the door to start censoring people because of something offensive, you got to understand that every last person offends somebody. So then what happens is you have this situation where now you're lining up people you like to get censored. They're saying what you believe in and what you think and what you like, but there's somebody they're offending. And if you're a black person, 9 times out of 10, the person you like is offending the people with the power.
Right.
So they're going to be much quicker, ass whipping. It's going to be much quicker to get them off than it is to get someone like Joe Rogan off, because the people he's offending, most of them don't have power except for the fact that it's going to this whole misinformation thing. Now to answer the question is, do I think it's about race? No, because Joe Rogan's been saying that shit for years. Been saying that for years.
Oh, you can speak freely, brother.
Okay. He's been saying that for years. Nobody had a problem with it until he brought a doctor on, a reputable doctor on, to refute a bunch of stuff that's being spewed over the last 2 years about this pandemic. And all of a sudden, he became a problem to some very powerful people. and he was getting in their pockets. So they decided they needed to do something about it. Now, I'm going to leave a lot of what I have to say to questions you may ask, and I'll bring it up later. But to answer your question, this isn't about race except to the people they're using and manipulating with the race card. Am I saying that I support him? No. Am I saying that he had a right to use that language and tone in the stories he's told? Absolutely not. What I'm saying is when you start censoring people, it doesn't just apply to what makes you upset.
That's right.
It starts applying to everybody who can be offended. You can't say it. That's one of the reasons we ask a comedian. And that's that's important because Joe gets his basis from being a comedian. Everything that Joe has done came from him being a comedian all the way to the UFC and all that other stuff he did. Started with him being a comedian. So he's used to having liberty.
Right.
And you never know. He may have been so deep in foresight that 30 years ago, he looked down and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go through comedy because comedy is going to allow me to say whatever the hell I want to say and get away with it. But now we're in this real sensitive state where comedians are being squeezed, and the only one that seems to be impervious to it is Dave Chappelle. Everybody else is treading lightly because you don't want to offend anyone, but every group has their own thing. So nobody wants to be made fun of anymore. So, you know, right. Whose expense do you laugh? I mean, do you get your laugh through? So right. Ultimately, it's not about race in the sense that if it was about race, we'd have been dealing with this dude a long time ago.
Right. So there are a lot of people, you know, who say, well, you know, maybe it didn't start off that way, but this is where we are now. He offended a lot of people, you know, a lot of black people with his statements. And we should cancel him because of that. But then it kind of begs the question, as you said before, why did nobody complain about it before? You know, we saw India Arie, she put up her little statement about why she wanted to remove her music from Spotify. And she said she was kind of standing at the door. And when Neil Young and others decided to, you know, walk through it, that's when she decided to come out and basically say the same thing. But then I ask myself, well, if you had this position for all these years, like you said, why did it take for this group of white liberals to, you know, find this outrage for you to decide to say something? And then what also bothered me is that she shared, I guess, these clips of Rogan using the N-word, but and I am not excusing it because, I mean, how do I say this? I don't expect Joe Rogan to be any less racist than anybody else, to be honest. It's not me excusing it, but it just means, okay, I'm not surprised. So why is it that you've seen this all this time, you say you had this position, but you didn't say anything until he dared to step outside of the box of conditioning from the mainstream media narrative? So I think that makes it very clear that there are agendas involved. Am I saying that India Arie has an agenda? I can't say if she does or if she doesn't. But, you know, I think that we're seeing a lot of this activism of convenience. We see this too much where, you know, you come out and you speak out when it's safe.
It's politics on multiple levels. Okay, you got to understand that the average person is watching what is being presented via media. Anybody who has access to media and has the platform for exposure can now use this as leverage, all the way down to guys like us. Because all you need is a general following and then talk on a topic that's hot and present a position based on what you think. Find the target group that you want and then make your statement in alignment with what that target group thinks. And now you've got a basis and a following that'll push you to another level. I guarantee you that the people who are pulling out are going to leverage their decision to pull out to further their careers. It's politics.
Right.
It's politics. So Number one is this dude didn't just start talking like this. Here's the bigger thing. Some of the people who are pulling out because, quote unquote, Joe Rogan is racist, if we go digging deep enough into their past, especially white liberals, we're going to find that they said stuff that we can also label as racist. Yes. This has nothing to do with that. It's just now that's the card that's easy to play to mobilize certain people, not just blacks, but the average liberal-minded person is going to be offended by it, and we can mobilize them, and then we're going to leverage the mobilization. Now, something that I asserted to when I first addressed this on my channel was, we don't know how things work. We don't understand how the game is played. The game is played at such a deceptive and creative and critical level that what we are realizing and watching right now could easily be the result of Joe Rogan's own crew triggering it. Why? Because the push and exposure. The first thing that anybody, I've been in the public eye in different ways, as an athlete, as a business owner in the music industry way back in the day. So I had a PR person. I've got a publicist and a PR person. My publicist constantly says stuff. I used to say, no, I don't want it. All publicity is good publicity. I don't care how bad it is, it's good publicity. I'm like, no, I don't want that. So, that was his back pulling forth. But I got what she was saying, because if you're in the public eye, you can always spin.
Right.
You can always spin. So the whole thing is, it's not beyond. Now, to the average person, it makes absolutely no sense. But a person that understands how the media works, it's not beyond the possibility that somebody in Joe Rogan's crew said, man, we finna go completely radical. We finna shake up everything. We're gonna go ahead and do this. And it could have been somebody like Rumble, who is now offering Joe Rogan $100 million to come over. They could have triggered it.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely can see that. And that's the thing. There's so many agendas that are behind the scenes that we just don't really understand at all. And I do definitely agree with that. Now, here's the thing. With this media campaign to silence him, right? We're talking about the outrage from mainly liberals, because they're at the head of this. White liberals. I know there's some black people, kind of jumping on the bandwagon, but we know that white liberals are at the helm of this. So shouldn't we be having these same people who are pushing for Joe Rogan to be canceled? Shouldn't we have them also take a look at other people out there that they've been holding and revering? Like what's this guy's name? Jimmy Kimmel. Didn't Jimmy Kimmel get caught? Didn't he do blackface publicly, like dressing up as an NBA player? Like, there's photos of this guy in blackface. There's currently a video that I even shared on my Facebook page, because it's all over the place, of Howard Stern in blackface calling black people the N-word right to their face in a parody of the Whoopi Goldberg Ted Danson thing. But I don't see that getting struck down. I don't see Howard Stern being canceled. I don't see Jimmy Kimmel being canceled. There's a lot of white folks.
It's not what it has always been, from my observation, is it's not so much the act, but the actor, or who's doing it and what can be gained by it. You got to understand, at every level, it's politics, not just on the government level, but on the play. You're talking about liberals. Okay, depends on doing it. Can I leverage this? Is it something that I benefit from by bringing this to the forefront? It's a bunch of things that sit under the scope of what's going on. You go back to the Me Too movement. It didn't become an issue until certain people decided to make it an issue. And while we want to sit up and say it was women, it wasn't. It was a political move. And it was being played by some major power brokers. Same thing here. You got funding now, and the funding is coming from Big Pharma. Let's be very clear about this. A big part of the funding is coming from Big Pharma, because
Joe Rogan threatens the profits.
Right. Okay.
By
now,
the stage to
the pockets that are being lined by Big Pharma are liberals.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So obviously, it benefits me to make this an issue if I'm a liberal, because I'm the one who's been championing this thing from the beginning. Now, the problem is, if I champion something that I put 2 years invested into championing a narrative that a person is literally rattling the pieces in a very public open forum, that if accepted starts a new narrative that I might not be able to dance around, this could actually impact my career.
Of course. Okay. Yes, he's threatening.
Yeah.
He's actually threatening a lot of careers and a lot of profit that is being made off of actual misinformation by people labeling him as providing a platform for misinformation. And that's the craziest part about this whole thing to me. It's like no one can see the agenda behind it, which begs the question: are Black people once again being manipulated for a white liberal agenda?
Of course. We are constantly liberated. I mean, we don't even realize it happens so much, and we get offended. Like, they're going to be more, Black people are going to more be offended by what we're saying right now than the actual fact that they're being manipulated. Yep. Because that's how we've been conditioned to think. Okay, this is from the playbook. This is page 1 from the playbook. Yep. Play the race card, trigger Black people, automatic mobilization. I mean, automatic. And it's not
and
that
we take over. That's the thing, though. We take over the fight and step to the front of the line.
And every time we are the only ones who don't benefit from it. Because let me show you what's going to happen.
Yes.
The liberals are going to at least delay what I believe is going to be inevitable, and that's the truth coming forth about this. Because here's the things what's happening. A lot of power brokers and agencies that were considered vital resources in information, the CDC, World Health Organization, are slowly and meticulously backtracking on what's being said. And guess who they're leaving out there exposed? Politicians. And so the politicians don't have the ability to backtrack the same way because they can't sit up. See, all that's the number saying, well, CDC says we've come to understand that blah, 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 actually doesn't just test for, it just doesn't show positive for COVID. It shows positive for the flu. It shows positive. So what you're saying is a bunch of those numbers were exaggerated. But you're not saying in that way, but you're backtracking in a way, you're covering your tracks, but you're leaving people who literally out there championed it and was out there literally on the grassroots level in people's faces telling them they needed to get this, they needed to do this and all this. Now you're leaving them out there and they're trying to fight now to keep from being exposed.
Yeah, it's just right. It just leads to the people who were bad actors just doubling down on what they said prior, because there's really no way out. There's no way out. And, what's funny is all the people that have been labeled as, misinformation spreaders and conspiracy theorists, it's just so crazy that everything that people like me have been saying all of this time, it's slowly being revealed to be true. Right. And by the same authorities that have been silencing us from the beginning. Yeah. But that doesn't seem to be enough for people to just question a little bit of what you've been told, which makes me feel like we're all trapped in this bubble of delusion. Like we just have to hold on to this narrative that we've subscribed to for so long, because so many of us are finding it hard to face the possibility that maybe we have been fooled or maybe we have made a mistake. But it's interesting to see that the reaction to the reality that you may have made a horrible mistake is to double down on it. Mm-hmm. To actually double down on it and just continue in that ignorance. And right. So from where I'm standing now, I'm of the opinion that Black people are always being manipulated for movements that have nothing to do with them and most times hurt them disproportionately. And I think
probably the most recent I can think about, and I'm pretty sure there have been other since, but the one that probably hit me that automatically comes to mind every time we talk about something like this is how we champion the movement of the LGBTQ community. And I understand, I believe in human rights. I believe that nobody should be in danger for life choices. I believe that you have a right to live your life as long as it doesn't impede upon my right to live mine. And so I believe in that, but not to the point that I'm going to go out and champion your cause. I'm going to get out in front of you, knowing that you're strategically using something that my people bled for as the basis for building yours. And what we don't realize is
while ignoring them.
Right. And the whole thing is blacks within your community aren't treated equally. If we're going to be honest.
So true. Yes.
Blacks within your community aren't treated equally. There's racism within the LGBTQ community that and despite all this talk about gender equality, there's genderism within the LGBTQ community.
Yes, there is.
Okay, but check this out. We championed, we fought for them. They have a right. We went out and fought for them. It's not about whether you believe it. It's about how much energy and effort and focus can you give to everything else and still defend and protect and fight for what matters to you. And here's the thing. You went out behind them. They took it to the Supreme Court. They won their issues, got certain things we fought for back in the 60s struck.
Right.
So we lost ground fighting with you, and you tell me one time that you've shown up on our behalf. That's the other thing. That's the other thing. Every group that we fight for never shows up for us.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Black people fight for everyone while no one ever fights for us. And whenever it's perceived that they're fighting for us, they're not really fighting for us. They're fighting for their agendas while using us and our suffering. And that's the unfortunate thing with this country and this society, that Black dysfunction, Black pain, it's profitable. It benefits all other groups. So, we have to face that reality in order to at least understand or consider the possibility that every ally, every person you see as an ally may have another agenda. Yes. Yeah. And that's what we're facing. Now, okay. Now there are people who say, well, Spotify is a private company and they can take down as many episodes as they want. They can get rid of Joe Rogan and blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Because I've seen that argument. Because now for those of us who are like, well, nah, listen, Joe Rogan, whether you like him or not, listen, you don't have to support him. And I don't have to agree with what he has to say, but I'm going to always defend his right to say it because I know how that will in turn apply to me, especially as a Black person in this country. We know that Black people are the most targeted group for censorship. We know that 1000%. So, I mean, we saw this back when Trump was please forget Trump. Back when they silenced Minister Farrakhan, when they banned him. Straight, no one's talking about that anymore. Like that should have been the sign right there, like what is going on. And the crazy thing is, this is not white conservatives. This is not Republicans that are pushing all of these authoritarian policies at our expense. These are white liberals that are pushing for censorship. They're pushing for authoritarianism. They're pushing for mandates. They're pushing for the government to make medical decisions on your behalf.
Well, the thing is, one of the problems that we've had is when we broke ranks with Republicans to go to the Democrats because, quote unquote, of civil rights, we didn't get the total memo. Nobody gave us the total memo. All they told us is that they are supporting civil rights. They are supporting your fight for your rights. But what we didn't get is the approach and the idea that you have a party that's predominantly white and there are no racists in it. The idea that because you're a Democrat means you're for Black people is absolutely foolish, and it's been proven.
That's nonsense, right? That's nonsense.
In the 60 years since, almost 60 years since
we've been in decline.
The voter rights thing and all the other things we got in 63. Okay, we're almost 60 years. We're almost at 60 years for that. Now, check this out. We got all that. And since then, we have systematically it increased in voter turnout every presidential cycle, with 90% with 90% of our vote going to Democrats automatically.
Right.
While we have declined socioeconomically, financially, in home ownership, in so many different ways that are a reflection. We've literally been on the decline. It was under, now check this out. We don't study. It was under a Democratic administration, Johnson, in which we got the social programs that started the disruption of the Black community, and we basically start to create ghettos.
Yeah.
At a higher level. Okay, that was under the, also during this very time, during the 70s, it was Biden, a Democrat, that was all out fighting busing that would have took Black students to white schools where they would have got an education in a school, perceptively believing an equal education. He fought that. Then it was under Clinton that we got the crime bill that produced these disproportionate sentencing based off of certain things that definitely had a more negative impact on Blacks than whites, even though we're talking about the same thing. Powder cocaine, different sentencing than crack cocaine.
Right.
Okay, and on down the line, and you go on, you can go under the Obama administration, and I'm not saying that there wasn't negative things that happen under Republicans, but we expect that as Blacks that the Republicans are going to get us. But what we didn't realize is that the whole time the Democrats are getting us. We are on a decline. We never ever see a situation where we are actually going up.
Improving, right. We don't see that under Democratic administrations. And let's be honest, in Democratic run cities, that's where you see the highest levels of crime
and violence.
I mean, this is just, these are the facts. And I think one of the things, one of the problems, I guess, with the civil rights movement, and when we saw this shift in the political parties as well, like around that time and just before, I think many people lost touch with the idea of desegregation as opposed to integration. We fought, you see, our people were fighting for desegregation, but integration became the primary language, where we were pulled into their systems. And now let's spend our Black people. Okay, Black folks, we're going to let you come along. Come on, come to our schools. Come spend your money with our businesses, which led a lot of Black people to abandon their own businesses, their own economic systems that were set up in their own communities that came by way of segregation. So the wealth index for Black families has been in steady decline.
You can't have an incline in wealth, and everybody keeps asking about why the wealth gap is widening. Ownership. You can't sit up and dominate spending in any industry and then not have a representation that mimics your spending in ownership. If you don't have ownership that mimics your representation in spending, you are losing wealth. Why? Because you are enriching another group.
Right. You're the product. You're the funding source.
Right. And the blueprint is brilliant and scary at the same time. What you don't realize is we talk about the civil rights movement, we talk about the NAACP, we talk about all of that was actually funded by Jews.
Yes.
Okay, now here's the thing. When Jews said, look, we're going to fund your civil rights movement, we're going to get behind it, we're going to be the financial force. So here you go, Dr. King, here you go, and y'all go out and do your thing. We're going to get behind. Here's the thing. When you start talking about integration versus desegregation, again, you start talking about, okay, we're fighting to eat in your diner. We're fighting to ride your bus. We're fighting. Okay, but what happens? We had our own bus companies. We had our own movie theaters. We had all the things that we were fighting to get to in yours. We already had it. So if we're going to take our patronage and put it over here just to say we're accepted, then these businesses are going to suffer. Guess what happened? Guess who was the predominant source that bought those businesses from us? The Jews.
We know who. But
the Jews.
But here's the thing. We're gonna get us flagged if we keep using that J word, which is horrible. Right. So we know who we're talking about, the J's.
From this point on, from this point on, we know who we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
Okay. These
But that's
automatic
sad.
lights.
But look at this. This is look
The fact
at
that
how we're able to talk about black people in any
oh,
context.
we can go all in on black peoples. The moment we start using the J word, we're up for censorship and shadow banning and suspension and everything else. So here's the thing. That group bought the businesses in the black community, because if you go back to the 60s, your grocery stores were owned by them because we sold them to them.
Yeah.
Everything pretty much within there, the cleaners, all that stuff was there. Then what happened is there was a power move going on within that community where they started moving within the jewelry business, within accounting and media. So they're taking over Hollywood, they're taking over the accounting industry, they're taking over this. All of a sudden, there's no need to generate revenue from the black community within the black community. We'll get it as you come out looking for us now. So what did they do? They sold a blueprint to Asians and Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who owns all of the stuff in the black community now? Asians and Arabs.
Right. Yeah. Everybody else. Yeah.
Again, we don't own it, but they own it. And so that's literally when you watch and you talk to Asians, specifically Asians. I have dialogue with all of them. I've watched it. I grew up in a black community where the little stores you went to on the corner was called Ram Totems and Kawajis and stuff like that. And it was all owned by someone else. There were a few little spots where mom and pop spots where we owned it and we went to it and we patronized them. But I mean, the major stuff that was happening at these places. But when you go and talk to them, they will tell you, when they were preparing to come over here as immigrants, they were given that blueprint. Set up in this community, they'll patronize you.
Yeah, everybody knows that. But oh, man, black people, everybody knows that they can come and extract money from us and support their families and support, we support other communities, economically, when it comes to social movements and activism. But if we just step back for a second and just take a look at it, we'll see that everyone benefits from us, and we're not really benefiting from anybody else. That's
not set up.
That's why I always push for us to build our own institutions, even in media. Like just the fact that we're having a conversation here and we can say whatever we want to say about black people. We can talk about Joe Rogan saying the word nigger and all of this stuff. And I know it won't get flagged or banned for any of that type of language. But when you start to talk about other groups, it's that snap on the hat. Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
Right.
And how do we break free from this dependency, this over dependency on whiteness to guide us through society, not even just society, but our understanding of injustice and racism? Because what I see today is that the gauge for racism and oppression and injustice is being set by the people who practice oppression and racism and injustice.
And that will continue to be the case until we start to execute a different way of moving, until we develop a certain level of understanding of how things work and we begin to act accordingly. One of the things is we've used this word quite a bit, but never when discussing us. Just in this conversation we've used this word quite a bit, but it's never been in discussing us. And the word is agenda.
Right.
We have no universal agenda. We have no specific agenda when it comes to economics, when it comes to education, when it comes to home ownership and wealth building. We have no agenda.
And when there are those of us who try to build an agenda, it gets attacked, and quite often by us.
Right. And so the problem is, without an agenda, there's no universal focus. See, one of the things is, and again, we can't use this word, but there were some protocols. And if you're not aware of it, I'll share it with you when we get off. But there were some protocols a while ago by a certain group of how they would move and how they would operate and how they would
on code. They know how to be on code.
And I mean, it covered, the protocols covered all types of situations and how they would respond based on those protocols. So when it happened, they didn't have to get together, and it wasn't an emotional response. It was a protocol generated response based off of the protocols. This is what happens when
specific code of conduct, which
right.
is something that
When this
other
happens,
groups
this is
have.
what you do. When that happens, this is what you do. And we will never do XYZ. We will never, and it's this, this, and this, always on code, and they generated power. And then others have mimicked that and created their agendas, and we're the only ones still sitting around functioning from a place of emotion.
Yeah, that's key word, emotion. And I think that's what keeps us in a state to, I'm not trying to be offensive, but I believe, let's be real. Black people in America are looked at as political children. That's how we are viewed. That's how we are treated, as political children. We don't understand politics, and people understand that they can manipulate us, they can trigger us, and they can get us to act based upon emotions. And
right.
When you vote based on emotion, you get mass incarceration. When you act based on emotion, you have major dysfunction in the Black family. So I think we need to stop allowing ourselves to be so triggered by, let's say, racist words, as we were talking about with this Joe Rogan thing. And maybe we should be more triggered by racist systems. I always talk about,
systems and policies.
Right. Policies, systems, institutions, because those are the things that affect you really, outside of just words.
Well, I think one of the problems that we've had is, again, we've allowed others outside of ourselves to define racism for us.
Right.
And one of the people that I've studied at great lengths is Neely Fuller Jr. And one of the things that Neely Fuller Jr. said some time ago is that until you understand white supremacy racism and how it works and how it impacts you, everything you think you know will only confuse you. And what happens is we tend to look at bigotry as racism, and they're different. Bigotry is one man's hatred or indifference to another group, but without a power system through which to act on that bigotry, it really has no direct impact on a group.
No,
now,
it doesn't.
He may have an impact on one or two people he may have power over, but it takes a systemic force of institutionalized power through which to execute that hatred and that indifference. And that's where the pain and the frustration and the setbacks come from. Not because Bob down there at the corner store is down there slanging around N-bombs and saying whatever. That has absolutely no harm or hurt to you outside of your feelings. How you actually get hurt is in your pocketbook, in your inability to build and fund your dreams, and to fund businesses, and to properly educate your child. Those systems, like the whole conversation behind CRT, is so diluted and erroneous that people don't get it. CRT has absolutely nothing to do with American history in the grand sense of bringing up slavery. Critical race theory started in the legal academy, and it was about reviewing laws and policies to see if racism was actually embedded in the code of policy and laws. It was to sit up and see, can you see a law that disproportionately negatively impacts blacks as versus whites? And they were able to find those laws. And so then
it's easy to obfuscate the issue by always attributing it to, like you said, the bigotry, because that becomes the cover for the policy.
Right, but critical race theory was not about, okay, did slavery exist? Did this person? It's about, can we find policy? So then it left the legal academy, and it seeped out into other areas of critical thought. It's not a simple thing. It's the ability to critically examine how policies impact you. And if you can find, and you can go back, redlining in the early 1900s.
Yeah, that's policy. And that's the thing. It's about, racism you know, as in this country is about systems that put up roadblocks to your ability to build wealth and to and you know, educate yourselves. Roadblocks. See, things that affect you tangibly. Like somebody calling me the N-word, that's not, I mean, that's not doing anything to me. Like I'm good. And go ahead.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Even
I was saying, and in the context of the Joe Rogan thing, which is basically this whole thing we're talking about, I mean, if we want to be honest, the majority of what we saw was him when he said the N-word. It was like he was saying they said nigger. I personally didn't see him call anyone the N-word in that video, but I did see Howard Stern call people the N-word in that video. But yet you see Howard Stern on MSNBC. You know, he's you know, sometimes as a pundit. Isn't he like cozying up with like Hillary Clinton and others? So for me, it's like we've seen racist language. So are we gonna listen? If we're gonna cancel all the racists, you pretty much going to be canceling most of white liberals, most prominent white liberals that you see in corporate media. You're going to cancel your president right now, Joe Biden.
Oh,
because he hasn't only used racially charged language in the past, but racist policies, the crime bill. So is it about white people who harm black people in a real systemic manner, or is it about the ones who say who utter certain sentences or say words that we don't like it sometimes?
We've been conditioned to be triggered emotionally.
Yeah,
and it leads us to miss the greater scheme. And unfortunately,
how do we undo it?
Like you said, we are politically immature.
Yeah.
And because we're politically immature, we're socially immature in understanding how things work within the greater.
We just won't understand. Construct. There's too much that we do not understand.
Right.
But how do we reverse this? Because that's the way. I mean, we have to reverse this, because when everything you do is based on emotion, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And Absolutely. I think we have a hell of a lot of evidence of that, just looking at the state that we're in today. How do we undo this moment that we're in, where we're so easily manipulated and triggered? Is it because we just have no agenda, as we spoke before, or a code, which leaves us in the position to always jump on the bandwagon of others who are willing to lead the way? Because like look at India Arie. She said, "Oh, I was this, that, and the other," but you know, I didn't want to say anything. Like she didn't say anything until those white folks said something.
No. So let's call it what it is. And I'm a big fan of India Arie. Let's call it what it is. You didn't say anything until you felt you had permission.
Yep. And an opportunity, possibly an opportunity.
And I'm pretty sure there's an opportunity somewhere.
Of course there is. She's all over the news cycle now. Yeah. I mean,
and so, you know,
all press is good press, brother. The more people are saying your name, it translates to profits. Always.
But my thing is, and you know this, I think we're both the same way. You can tell the true intent of a person by their movement when it is uncomfortable, when it is inconvenient.
That's right.
And even painful. I have lost money because of stances I took. And even in times where I've had international clients that got wind of some stuff that I had on one of my channels and came to me and said, "I understand that you also do this, blah, blah, blah." These are clients from my business that didn't even know who I was as a voice in the Black community, but somebody, some kind of way, got them something, which wasn't by accident. And they're saying, "Look, we love working with you. We want to continue working with you, but we need you to tone it down and probably pull X, Y, Z in that one and this one, pull it down." And my response simply was, I've loved working with you too, but it's not going to happen.
That's right.
And at the time I did that, I was in a serious rebuilding mode, and that was my primary source of income. My second largest primary source of income, and I stood my ground. But that's when you find out what people are really about. Not when I
what
can
they
get
do
out
when
here.
nobody else is
Sure.
looking. That's right.
Everybody is on the bandwagon now from a liberal perspective that's sitting up screaming, get rid of. I
Yes,
mean,
it's
there's
trending.
no risk. There's absolutely no risk right now in saying ban Joe Rogan from Spotify. No risk at all.
Right.
So, you get on then. I mean, did he just start saying that stuff? Or did that loop of stuff that you pull come back from years of him saying different things over time, and you put it all in one conglomerate loop and you played it, and it's a totality of what he said over the years? If that's the case, why are you checking him now? You're not checking him because he said it. You're using that as a leverage to underwrite the real reason you're checking him, and
It's
that's
convenient.
because he's in your pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're going to use us to leverage the attack.
Right.
You got to have some offended black people because he used the N-word.
But there's that word, use. We keep getting used, and I think we're being used even by our own people who are deputized to use us at the behest of white liberal agendas, and that's extremely, extremely frustrating. So I think we need to listen. We need a code. We need a code of conduct that we will stick to. Because as long as we don't have a code, a universal code of conduct, I don't care what it is. It could be, let's just get one thing down first, black folks, that we say, all right, when this happens, we all know this. Can we just do that?
I actually, man, like probably 8 years ago, I did two things. I came up with the blueprint for black empowerment. I actually consulted some heavy hitters, one of which was at the time, to me, the greatest voice on black group economics, which was Dr. Claude Anderson. I reached out to him. I actually had a chance to interact with he and his wife, Joanne. And I had them look at what I was doing, and, they were approval. They gave their approval of what I did. And it's there. One of them is the blueprint for black empowerment. The other one is the Black Code of Conduct.
Yep.
And it's on the site for people who want to check it out. And I always left it up. And matter of fact, the blueprint, the black empowerment, says the blueprint 1.0, because it was just my input on what I believe need to happen. And I was asking other great minds to give their input, and we can get started on it. And then the other part was the code of conduct. And there are just certain codes that we need to operate by in order to even consider ourselves a community.
Oh, we need to talk about that then, brother, because we gotta start really getting that word out.
Yeah,
putting that information out.
Right now we're not a community. A community has to have certain things that qualify it as a community, and we're missing some of those things. And we're in hoods, but there's no community. And we're drifting further and further away from the idea of community. See, community is a cousin of the village. You talk about, it takes a village. Well, the community is the cousin. And unfortunately, when you dismiss community, you dismiss collectivism. When you dismiss collectivism, you invite individualism. When you have individualism, it's hard to see the struggle in a collective sense, except when you get triggered. And so the only time that we are actually functioning as a unit is when we are emotionally triggered and less likely to respond.
And working against our own interests.
Right. And less likely. What happens is when you're triggered, you're less likely to respond strategically.
Right.
Okay. And so that's the reality. So we don't need to be unified when we're triggered. We need to be unified when we're thinking.
When we're thinking. That's right. That's right.
And that's a part of the problem. Your question was, how do we undo it? The challenge is you don't undo decades and decades of programming overnight. And so you got to come up with a system. And I also did that. You're going to literally, and I've said this, I don't know how many times, that in order for us to experience true empowerment, true liberation, and a true sense of autonomy, we're going to need black men specifically, black women as well, but black men specifically, to be willing to plant seeds that we will not live long enough to see come to fruition.
Right. And you know what else? I was listening to Minister Farrakhan speaking a couple of years ago, and he spoke about the black community's need for soldiers, and a soldier is someone that is going to stay on the task, stay on the mission, even in the face of of extreme loss, which may even include their own lives.
Right.
And it's that level of commitment and sacrifice that we need, especially from our men. I think we need that. Actually, no, not just, listen, we both men, black men and women, we need that commitment to take on losses because we're afraid to take losses. I think we've been shown so many losses and failures. It's like even a modern version of buck breaking the whole community by always, there's so much imagery and there's so many things. The way they think, man, let me tell you something. This system, this white supremacist system is so strategic, and it is brilliant because it conditions you to see any fight or any fight for black liberation or empowerment as a losing battle. They always make sure that you see that imagery. It's a losing battle. Any attempt for a black person to use their authentic voice, you will be chastised. You will be castrated socially. Look what happened with Nick Cannon. Look, even Whoopi Goldberg, who is a shill for the Democratic Party and one of the loudest voices for censorship and mandates and authoritarianism. When she stepped out of pocket, look what they did to her.
With the quickness. And the message is consistently sent that you will be dealt with severely if you get out of line. And no matter what a person's opinion of this brother is, some of the sharpest things that has come to mind. See, I'm able to look at people and get the message. And one of the things that Umar Johnson said
yes, brother. Yep.
About 7 years ago was white supremacy is absolutely nothing without black compliance. And another thing that he really got jumped on by black agents was when he stood up and said that the greatest commitment that a black man can make to
marry a black woman
is the commitment to a black woman.
Yep.
And they ate him alive for that one.
Isn't that crazy?
And the thing is, but when you talk about white supremacy is absolutely nothing without black compliance. And you have to study the idea of compliance and how we comply. And the idea is there's a level of fear of what will happen. And one of the things that it comes from is economic castration. So if you have a means of eating and eating well, there's a fear. Now, the poor man doesn't fear not eating because he ain't eating that good no way. So that's not how you get to him, but he doesn't have the means of the clarity yet to become a problem. So he's over here being handled another way. He's been misdirected. And so because we have been commodified, and the whole idea is that the whole thing about success in this country is money. He's out there trying to get that because that's the way he's going to get his respect, his clout, or whatever it is that makes him feel like a man. So we're going to get you to chase that 9 times out of 10. You're going to do something you're not supposed to, and we're going to lock you up. You're never going to really truly be a threat. But for the one who is figuring the system out and successfully navigating it, you are a threat if you decide to use that knowledge to empower your people. So the moment that you start empowering your people, we castrate you too. And we castrate you economically. We kill your means through which you make money. Because the truth of the matter is your people have been trained not to respect you if you don't have it.
I'm hearing some weird feedback. I don't know if that's you or if that's me.
Okay, I'm not hearing it on this end. Hopefully it's not on my end.
Hearing some weird feedback. Okay, no, that's me. That's my phone. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. But I always say the quickest road to consent is fear. So yeah. Brother, I appreciate this conversation. What advice do you have for Black people who are getting wrapped up in the Joe Rogan controversy? Because me personally, listen, if you don't support Joe Rogan, I don't think we need Joe Rogan to be, I don't need Joe Rogan to be a champion for Black people, honestly. Like, I'm not expecting him to be a civil rights leader. I'm not expecting him to be...
That should never be the expectation in the first
I don't
place.
expect him to be any less racist than anyone else. So, I mean, for me, I look at the totality of the situation and I see the threat that he is to the corporate mainstream
Right.
Political narrative that many people see as bullshit, but aren't allowed, the space to vocalize that, to verbalize that. But Joe Rogan does have that platform, and we have to remember he dwarfs the viewership of a lot of these, like the CNNs and the MSNBCs combined.
Right.
And what's interesting is Joe Rogan doesn't represent like a conservative or the, like the Fox News side or the neoliberal, so-called liberal MSNBC, CNN side. He's independent. Like he's more down the middle, and he brings in people from all political affiliations to have these discussions. Think about it. Like CNN, they take, these little segments that may be 2 minutes into to pour all these opinions on you. But Joe Rogan, he'll have a podcast that he's sitting there for 3 hours having a long, thorough discussion with people. And he's keeping that audience. He's maintaining that audience. So that's obviously something that people want to hear.
I mean, the offer from Rumble gives you some insight into the type of revenue he's generating.
Yes.
You have to understand that if he wasn't generating that type of revenue, at the first outcry, Spotify would have dropped him dead.
His ass. Yeah.
Right. So that lets you know that he's generating a lot of revenue. Now, here's the thing. This is what it goes to show you that it's not about race. Because
it's about money.
It's about money. Because if it was about race, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He'd have been dropped. It'd have been long gone. But because he's about money, then everybody. And then here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Spotify hasn't dropped him, but Rumble's over there saying, look, man, forget all that. We're going to give you $100 million over 4 years, plus the revenue you generate, a piece of the revenue you generate. And then all your sponsorship,
keep all your stuff,
keep everything, bring it over here. That's the kind of thing that he's carrying. And that kind of person is dangerous to certain people.
Yeah.
And it ain't us.
Yeah.
It ain't us that he's dangerous to. Do I consider him a friend? No. I don't consider him an ally. And here's why. I'm looking for us. My greatest threat or my greatest concern isn't Joe Rogan. It's the people who look like me that are in my circle that don't mean me well. Michael Blanchard, my partner on and friend, my partner on The Teachers, he asked me about 8 years ago what I thought the greatest threat to Black progress was. And my response was the greatest threat to Black progress is a Black face with a white agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the people that concern me. The people that have been sent out by other organizations to serve as buffers and to redirect our energy, our efforts, and to get us caught up in the things and get us triggered and get us, we never ever
keep us in line.
Yeah. Those are the people that concern me. Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's white. So I actually expect white people to be worried about white things. That's what I expect. So why am I offended because he's over there doing white people stuff? My thing is, what are we doing? He's not our threat. What we need to be doing is literally mobilizing and coming up with think tanks with great minds, people who are good in education. We need to have a think tank on how we're going to holistically educate our children. We need to have a think tank on how we're going to collectively move in the economic sphere. We need to have a think tank on how we're going to create and generate power within the political sphere. Those are things that we need to be looking at. Anything where we envision a problem, that should be a think tank on how we're going to overcome the problem. We're not going to overcome it through emotion.
I'm here. You still see me?
Yeah, I see you.
Okay, yeah, my other device it overheated.
So to me that's the scope of it. We can sit up and whine and complain about what everybody else is doing, But ultimately, it's going to be up to us. That's an old African proverb that I quote frequently, and it says that if there's no enemy on the inside, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm.
Right.
We need to deal with what's going on with us. We need to be our greatest champion. We need to be our greatest ally. We need to be a force. There's too much talent, too much intellectual genius for us to be where we're at.
There's one thing I agree with everything you said, but there's one thing where I have a small exception, where it comes to our understanding of, friends and allies. Like, there's a difference between a friend and an ally in my book, because enemies can be allies at a certain point. You understand?
Yeah, if you know how to play the game, yeah.
Right. So I don't need Joe Rogan to be a friend to Black people, but we have to be able to identify that in this moment, as it pertains to certain issues that we're experiencing in this country, he is acting as an ally to a specific agenda that targets us more than anyone else. Who are the people that are getting fired right and left for refusing to take the juice? Who are the people who largely represent the essential workers, low earning workers that are being tossed off of their jobs for not abiding by the mandates? Which community represents the least poked group out of every other one in the United States? That's us. So if you think about it, we're adversely impacted the most by a lot of these mandates.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. The way that I define an ally is a little different. No, an ally doesn't have to be a friend. In many instances, it isn't. The ally is the one that you align with for a particular cause or situation.
Right.
Okay. And the only reason I don't refer to him as an ally is I don't think necessarily he's doing it with the specific idea of I'm going out and protecting this particular group. He just happens to be doing something that is. Now, where I can say is we don't necessarily need to be an enemy for him right now.
Right.
Because of what he's doing. But for him to be an ally to me, he will have to actually sit down with someone who represents us and see. He can't be an ally to us in my
without
opinion,
also fighting for our interests. Like,
not just that, in order for him to really truly be an ally for us, we actually have to be unified enough to have an agenda that he can agree to align with. Now he can be moving in our interests and he can be a benefit, but to me, an ally, there's an understanding of exactly how we're working together.
Right. An ally, but right, because being an ally is based in intention. Not convenient circumstance, not just circumstance.
Right.
So yeah, I can agree definitely in that respect.
Right. So,
but I definitely,
he definitely doesn't need to be.
I don't think Black people need to get involved in this. This shit ain't this don't got nothing to do with us right now.
Now we don't need to give our energy to it. That's going to work itself out. But again, I think we need to learn how to be offended by policy and laws more than we are about words.
Yep. And hopefully we can get there. But as long as we continue to have these conversations and invite more people to these conversations, I mean, it's slowly happening. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people. I mean, I don't want to sound like, oh my God, the world is ending, because honestly, I see people waking up. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been seeing a lot more Black people who are finding the courage to speak up. Black people who are more willing to think critically about things, and engage in these conversations, and more Black people that are willing to learn. See, that's the thing. And it's not just it's not a Black problem, but it's a problem overall. I think we face in society where people just don't want to learn anything new. And, they feel threatened by new information, because I guess it challenges what you've invested yourself in for so long. But man, to learn is a great thing. That's what we teach our children, to learn. So, when you're telling people don't ask questions and just comply, you cannot view someone like that as a friend or an ally. And right now, white liberals are the ones that are telling us to stop asking questions or questioning the science, and comply.
Right.
Nah, that's not a friend or an ally to me. And
No,
yeah, that's not something that we should subscribe to at all.
I agree 100% on that.
But
So
yeah, brother. Do you have any final words for the people out there listening, whether they be black or white, that are listening or that are invested in this Joe Rogan um uh campaign to get rid of Joe Rogan? I mean, what would you say to not just black people, to be honest? Because I know right now we're talking a lot about racism, and it seems like people have forgotten the original reason why this whole thing started. And I
right.
think a lot of white liberals who consider themselves allies are also being manipulated. They're being manipulated based upon their limited view and understanding of what racism is. So they've abandoned that. They've allowed their fear to kind of, push the whole thing. Oh, get rid of him because of misinformation. But then the racism thing, oh man, that takes it to a new level. Because when it was just about misinformation, if you notice, not too many people were invested
Really
in it.
biting on it. Yeah, they had
Spotify was like, yeah, all right, Neil Young, cool, we'll take your shit down. Bye. They were just like,
right.
bye. Then insert NDRE in the racism conversation. Boom. Now you double the size of your army now. Now you got black people in there.
Yep.
This is about money.
And I agree 100%. My final contribution is this. If we're ever going to be taken seriously, if we're ever going to actually realize our vision or our dream of empowerment and autonomy, we're going to have to learn to think critically. We're going to have to learn to see something and not respond to it emotionally, but take time to break it down critically and analyze it and ask ourselves, what is the true intent of this information? Who released it? What is their agenda? What is their motivation behind releasing it? How will the long-term effects impact me and the things that I care about? And then
who will it help?
But here's the biggest question we never ask ourselves. Mm-hmm. How can I benefit from being involved? And if I can't benefit from being involved, I've got to get off my moral tricycle and sit my behind down and wait for an opportunity to get on something where there is an opportunity for me to benefit.
Right. Okay. Well, some people might say, well, black folks, you benefited from this because now Spotify is pledging $100 million towards black content creators and, to I guess, bolster marginalized communities, whatever that means.
That's that ambiguous term that means not just black people.
People of color.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of people of color. And so that means very little to me. The bottom line is, see, that's that idea when someone says, well, Spotify says they're going to contribute. My thing is, we spend far more than 100 million into white institutions on an annual basis. We can fund it ourselves and own it. We could fund it ourselves and own it. And then we wouldn't have to ask them to give us jack. We're asking people to give us something we've already given them. Stop giving them your money. Start investing it in the things that are supporting your interests. And you don't have to ask them. I said this before. I got a lot of people ticked off 20 years ago when I said it, 15 years ago when I said it, and I actually wrote about it. And then I just brought it up again last week and fired up some people. I'm going to say it again and tick some people off. But because I'm saying it about black institutions, nobody's going to give a damn. So I can say it. Stop pouring your money into churches that are not pouring money and resources back into the community. Bottom line, this isn't about your faith. This isn't about how you feel about God, about Christ. This is about the bottom line. You can't keep pouring millions of dollars into an institution that's taking that money on Monday morning, deposited it into white banks that won't even give you a loan to advance your own vision or your dream, start your business, upgrade your home, and increase the value of your home. You can't get the very money you invested in your church because your church invested in a white institution that's turning around giving loans to white people who are coming into your community, gentrifying your community, driving up the darn value, and kicking you out based off of your inability to pay the taxes on the increased value of the property.
Yep.
You got to stop that.
Yep. Oh, that's another conversation. We'll get. That's going to be another conversation.
Yeah,
My
I mean, it's that simple.
Yes.
We have the money. We are mismanaging it, and we're trusting it in the wrong hands. There's no way you put that kind of money into an institution that's not reinvesting in you. There's no way that black churches shouldn't have credit unions on a grand scale, that black churches shouldn't be the primary builder of schools in the black community.
Yep. Because we're funding them.
Right.
Why can't we fund it? Yep.
So, I mean, and I can go on and on about the things that the black church has the capacity and the resources to do, but isn't doing.
True.
You know, so
black people, we need to start investing in ourselves, each other, start trusting each other, because see, that's another thing. Whenever we see something, that's a black business, a black company, something that's being, spearheaded by black folks, for some reason we just don't trust it.
Right.
And that's social conditioning as well. That's social engineering as well. But so not only should we start trusting black people more when it comes to these types of endeavors, but we should also make sure that the
you muted. You muted yourself.
Oh, sorry.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Right. I'm just saying, just those who are actually seeking to engage in business with other black people, we got to make sure that we do everything righteously. That we got to do it the right way. You know what I'm saying? Don't put that sour taste in people's mouths. Like, we got to learn to treat business like business and not as a hustle. That's the problem. We've grown to look at business as a hustle.
Right.
For a lot of different reasons, and
Right.
some of those reasons is not our fault anyway, because, when you're facing so many economic roadblocks, sometimes you're kind of relegated to a position where you got to hustle.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mentality that was created out of necessity,
Right.
that we've got to refine and hone and rebuild so that it fits a model that promotes trust. And hopefully we can get that done. But one thing we can't do is keep investing in things that do not serve us
at all. So you know what? We need to make a commitment here that at least just us, the first two, we are going to start working towards building these institutions, finding the qualified individuals that are needed in order to get the job done in as professional and efficient a manner as possible. Because, people follow by, you got to lead by example, right?
I agree. I'm 100% in. Like I told you when you came on the show, I'm 100% in. And it's going to take people connected. And I think you make a valid point. I think sometimes we keep waiting for everybody to jump on board before we do something. And sometimes people need to see it done. And,
right.
And say, well, shoot, if my whole thing is the very reason that the forces of hell were rained down on Marcus Garvey is because he went out and showed it could be done.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was dangerous. And so they went inside our community and used our own to bring him down.
That's a good point.
And so what we have to do is, instead of trying, and I've had to learn this, and I'm still learning it, and I'm glad that I've come across somebody that I know is about doing things, because we've interacted before. But I had to learn mobilizing our people is next to impossible because we're not literally connected. Number one. Number two, we don't trust anything. If now a white person can come up and say the same thing about a black issue and get more support than we get. But what we're going to have to do is actually sit up, and they're going to have to see, man, they did this in a year. And then when we're able to sit up and say, man, we got together, we committed, and this is what we started to do, and this is what we've done in the year, we could really use some help.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to actually be committed, man, to just, my whole thing is, and I know it's the same with you because of your children, but I've got a legacy I'm trying to leave my kids. So no matter what other Black people do, I've got a fight that I'm going to fight until I die.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. It's not dependent upon how many other Black people I get on board. It's just, hey, man, I'm fighting this fight till I die because I'm leaving that legacy to my kid. And hopefully some of those kids get it and they take up the mantle and they take up the mindset of ownership. That's the whole thing with my kids. Own your stuff.
Same. That's right, brother.
Period.
Same with mine. Same with mine. And man, you know what? At the end of the day, yes. Unfortunately, most people are looking to be led. That they need to see an example to I guess to join that, or as opposed to, let's say, creating something. I get it. If you build it, they will come. So I say, let's build it and let's do it right, because what you said earlier about the people who are most targeted, the ones who become the most dangerous, are the ones who show they actually produce results, right? Like with Joe Rogan, like that guy, he has amassed a huge following and money generating like a revenue generating model. Look at Minister Farrakhan. You can say what you want to say about the minister, but they grow their own food. The Nation of Islam, they have built it's like they got their own like army, like they are a sovereign entity, basically.
And it's
That's
doable.
Dangerous to
it's
status
doable.
quo.
And so that's what makes him dangerous. That's why he's been on there. And my whole thing is, I told Michael this, man, many years ago. I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna get off. But I told him many years ago, I said, if I don't have a target on my back, I'm kind of offended. It means that I'm being perceived as not a threat.
You're safe.
I'm safe. And I don't like the way that sounds. I don't like the way that feels. I'm safe. It's almost like, if you go back to the hood and say, I grew up in the hood, that's like calling me the B word.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like calling me the B word. What? So my thing is,
oh shit, I like that.
My thing is this. I don't want to have a target because I'm talking shit. I want to have a target because I'm doing shit. And so that's where I'm at right now. It's easy to get on and talk and get people hyped up. But what are you doing that you can put your hands on?
Right.
And so that's where I'm at now, man.
All right, I'm in the same place, brother. Listen, we're gonna definitely get behind the scenes and talk about this. There's a few other people, that I deal with who are like-minded as well and about doing the work. We need to just do it, man. Let's build it and they will come. You know what I'm saying? Because a person's character, I mean, I can tell that you're a man of integrity just based on what you're saying. And anybody that knows me that they know that there's no bullshit when it comes to me. You know what I'm saying? So I think that element of trust is essential. So the people who are involved, that is an important thing, in order to build that trust, you produce something for the people to get behind. So we're gonna do it, brother. And anybody else listening, if you want to join and you want to, give a helping hand to building some of these institutions, we got to start somewhere. Let's do it. All right. So I appreciate you, brother, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
And you guys for watching. And I'm going to be doing a Clubhouse later tonight at 7:30. Whoever can join, come on in. We're going to have this conversation 7:30 tonight on Clubhouse. Peace. Hold on. End broadcast.